Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Negotiation. In this episode, we speak with Craig Smith, CEO of Burton Snowboards China. With the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing right around the corner, we continue our look at snow sports in China, this time through the lens of the sport of snowboarding and a discussion with the person heading up the most famous brand name in the sport, Burton. We talk about the snow sport culture in China and compare it to that of Japan, and compare the clientele makeup of the Chinese consumer with those in the West. We talk about how Burton markets and localizes snow sports in China, and how Burton focuses on marketing it as a lifestyle in China. We talk about how retail has evolved in China and how Burton has adapted, and a broader look at how brands should set goals and strategize for market entry into China. We wrap up our conversation discussing what the impact of the Winter Olympics in China will have on Burton's China operations. Enjoy.
Part of the sponsorship deal was to send the athletes to Canada, to Whistler. So we sent the team over there, and there was about 15 participants for the camp. We got them there and we got them on snow. And 2 days later, Ben gave me a call and said, "Hey, Craig, I'm really sorry, but these kids don't really know how to snowboard yet." I'm like, "Hey, Ben, just wait." 2 weeks later, he calls me up and says, "Hey, Craig, just want to give you an update. You're right. Yeah, they're good athletes. They're snowboarding very well. And this one young girl, her name is Yu Jia Yu, just did a perfect 720 in the half pipe after 2 weeks of snowboarding."
Home to over 4 billion people, the Asia-Pacific region boasts one of the most powerful consumer markets on the planet. Not only is it home to half the world's under 30 population, but it's also home to more than half the world's internet users. It's a market no globally minded brand should ignore, but entering markets like China is no easy task. Just ask the likes of Microsoft, Google, Uber, and Facebook. Times are changing, and with the right partners, doors are slowly opening as more and more companies find success expanding into the markets of the Middle Kingdom. I myself spent 8 years in China, mostly as a venture capitalist, helping early-stage tech companies enter the Asia-Pacific market successfully. This show is dedicated to uncovering and examining successful China entry and growth strategies by interviewing the people behind those success stories. My name is Todd Embley, and welcome to The Negotiation, brought to you by WPIC Marketing and Technologies. Craig, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So as we usually do with all of our guests, and we usually have these fun stories of how we ended up in China, but you don't just have a fun story about how you ended up in China. You have a title that explains the fact of why you're in China. So tell us a little bit about maybe your professional history and how you ended up as the CEO of Burton China.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a very lucky man. I've been working for Burton Snowboards for over 20 years. I started my career with Burton out of our Tokyo office. I spent most of my career in Tokyo, kicking off the career working at a sports marketing company, representing a brand called Power Bar. So back in the day, back when triathlons and triathletes and mountain bikers were using power bars to energize themselves, get up and down hills and around the lakes.
I remember power bars for sure.
Yeah, it is great. And then because Power Bar, one of our companies we worked with was Oakley out of California. So in 95, I was fortunate enough to land the job to start Oakley Japan subsidiary. So I did that for about 5 years, and then fell in love with snowboarding in the 90s, and the opportunity to jump from Oakley to Burton opened up, and I took it and started my career with Burton out of our Tokyo office, overseeing all of APAC. So at that time, it was Japan, Korea, China, and New Zealand and Australia. And then had a little bit of a stint back in the US where I was overseeing the international business, including Canada, China, and the entire Southern Hemisphere, which was amazing. And then because of some developments in Japan, because of the importance of the Japanese business to Burton, I was sent back to Japan in 2007 and put in 12 years running the business for Burton out of APAC, and then was sent back to the corporate headquarters in Burlington, Vermont, and to oversee all the international business. And then a gentleman by the name of Jake Burton came to me one day and said, "Hey, Craig, this China market looks kind of important. Maybe we should send someone over there that we can trust." And that was Jake's job, saying, "Pack your bags and go." And so in 2019, I took over the role of CEO of Burton China.
That's well said. I appreciate that. I think I've had managers or owners of companies speak to me and imply the similar things, and I kind of picked up what they were putting down in the same way.
Yeah, you're not much of a choice, to be honest.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It was a request, wasn't it? Your professional background, mostly based out of Japan. We know how different Japan and China are, but maybe most of our listeners aren't as familiar with those differences. Okay. Especially the way that it relates to snow sports. Okay. And I'm somewhat guessing, but I'm imagining that you've probably sussed out some very major, differences, between the two areas. Can you talk to us a little bit about, let's say, what you learned in Japan that you're still applying today, things that worked in your work as CEO Burton, and then let's juxtapose that with China. What works? What's different? What's the same? What did you have to relearn, teach yourself, understand? If you could actually lay that out for us, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. The differences between Japan and China are numerous culturally. The attention to detail the Japanese have versus the Chinese love for adventure is certainly one of the major differences between the two cultures among many. But it's interesting. There's a lot of similarities between the markets, the snow industry markets with Japan and China. I was fortunate enough to be in Japan for the 1998 Nagano Olympics. That was the first year that snowboarding was actually in the Olympics. So I was at that event and to watch snowboarding's Olympic birth, which is pretty amazing. And I look at China today and I really compare it to Japan at that same time frame specifically for the snowboarding industry, where snowboarding in China today is very much in its infancy, just really getting started. The interest people have in snowboarding and the lifestyle around snowboarding is amazing. The energy, the passion people are picking up. And there's a lot of similarities between Japan and China on that front. The other thing that China and Japan share is this desire to kind of get outside social norms. And I think that was one of the reasons why snowboarding in Japan became so popular. Japan is, to be very honest, it's a fairly pre-programmed society. What I mean by that, and it's not a negative way, it's very much, the day-to-day, and as people go through life, is fairly programmed. And snowboarding gave the Japanese a chance to break out of that program a little bit. And I think it was one of the reasons why snowboarding became so popular in Japan. And, right after the Olympics, the 2005 timeframe, it was booming. And I see a lot of similarities between China and Japan and the consumers along those lines, which is going to be extremely interesting to watch the next 5 years of the snow industry in China really, really develop and expand. I mean, I think that some of the learnings that we have from growing the Japanese business, we can apply to China, but of course we have to localize it. And that's where the differences are. The differences between the consumer and, of course, 20 years ago, the internet and the digital commerce space was extremely different. And that's one of the major differences between Japan and China is the Chinese consumers so far advanced in the digital world, probably the most advanced consumer in the world when it comes to the digital space.
Yeah, I'm going to want to dive into how that changes things, even marketing or, payments or, any of these kinds of things for sure. Right. But let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit about the backstory with regard to Burton in China specifically. How did it begin? How has it evolved? How difficult was it? How easy was it? And where are you now trying to take it based on what you've learned so far as entering the market of China?
Yeah, so we actually entered the Chinese market in 2002. At that time, the industry was fairly non-existent. There was probably only a handful of resorts, and only a few of those resorts actually had aerial lifts. There weren't too many chairlifts even in China at that time. But knowing the Chinese, the scale of China, that someday snowboarding and the ski industry would get some traction. It would take off. So we were very patient in watching the market. And then in 2006, we actually started to sponsor the Chinese national snowboard team. Really kind of a fun story around that. In 2006, we started the sponsorship, and the snowboarding team was new. It was actually a number of very young boys and girls, and because they were boys and girls between 12 and 14 years of age who migrated from some other sports, from gymnasts or some gymnastics or in karate to snowboarding. And part of the sponsorship deal was to send the athletes to Canada, to Whistler. And a gentleman by the name of Ben Wainwright was running a snow camp at Whistler in the summertime. And so we sent the team over there, and it was about 15, participants for the camp. And they were super excited. None of them spoke English. The first time outside of China, and we got them there and got them on snow and kind of said goodbye. And 2 days later, Ben gave me a call and said, "Hey, Craig, I'm really sorry, but these kids don't really know how to snowboard yet." I'm like, "Hey, Ben, just wait. Just give us some time. Give us some time." And he's like, "Yes, okay." And 2 weeks later, he calls me up and says, "Hey, Craig, just want to give you an update. You're right. They're good athletes. They're snowboarding very well. And this one young girl, her name is Liu Jiayu, just did a perfect 720 in the half pipe after 2 weeks of snowboarding." And of course, Liu Jiayu was a three-time Olympian and the silver medalist at Pyeongchang Olympics. So we're very proud of Jiayu. Amazing woman, amazing athlete. Anyway, so that was 2006. And then as the market started to show up, started to grow, more people showed up to learn about snowboarding from all over the world. A lot of companies started to enter the market. And to be honest, they entered a little bit too early. So they made some investments and it didn't work out well for them. And then they kind of exited the market. And then in 2013, thinking that the investments being made in China were going to pay off in the future, we started our wholly foreign-owned entity, WFI, the Burton China, in 2013. And then sure enough, that paid off because in 2015, that's when Beijing was awarded the 2022 Winter Olympics. And soon thereafter, the central government of China announced that they wanted to create 300 million winter sports enthusiasts. And to be honest, I'm still not quite sure what that means, 300 million winter sports enthusiasts, but a lot of investments are being made to support the Olympics. And that really helped to accelerate the growth of the industry and snowboarding. And presently, the growth of the snow industry is pretty spectacular in China. The scale it's hard to fathom the scale.
Yes. And I think we've tried multiple times on this podcast to make it fathomable, digestible, understandable. It's just not easy to do. It's like trying to tell people what the volume of sales on Singles Day is to people who just can't quite comprehend that level of single day kind of e-commerce or what actually, I mean, it's like, trying to think of how far we are away from the sun. Like, it's just, you can't quite put it into context.
Oh, I'm going to steal that. I'm sorry. I'm going to use that.
It's so true. So, let's make a bit of an effort to try to do that. Let's talk about the consumers. Okay. Let's maybe start there. Customers, consumers, your clients, the whole thing. How are Chinese consumers different when it comes to the snow sports industry? And let's maybe lay that out, not just independently, but maybe in comparison to the West or the rest of the world. I mean, there's Europe, there's North America, there's other areas of the world. But how are the Chinese consumers specifically different? And then let's start to talk. Well, let's sit there. I want to get into localizing product and marketing and stuff. But let's just talk a little bit. Start with the Chinese consumers. Lay that one out for us first.
Yeah, so the Chinese consumers are in a very different stage of development for the snow industry than consumers in the Americas and in Europe, just because the sport and the industry is so new. It's the sport really just took off in 2016, 2017, and the information that the Chinese consumer is getting via snowboarding is a different a different avenue than the Western consumer will get it. And, in China, again, everything's very digitally focused. The KOLs or the key opinion leaders are hugely influential in China, where someone in the Americas or Europe may find their information about skiing and snowboarding and from magazines or from manufacturers or other type of venues. The Chinese consumer really gets it from online, from key opinion leaders that are very, very influential. And with that said, they also are business people. So they are paid to educate the consumer. And the snow industry, as it's starting really to develop, the KOLs are very much focused on, in a positive way, to really inform the consumer. But there's a little bit of a twist sometimes to how they are informing the consumer. Of course, one other thing about the Chinese consumer is they love to travel. They love to travel internationally. The amount of travelers from China to Japan for the snow industry is significant. To put things in perspective, Burton, we have a store in Hokkaido in the resort town named Niseko. And before COVID, about 60-70% of the customers were from China, from either mainland China, Hong Kong, or Taiwan. And then as COVID kicked in and travel became very difficult, that the sales at that store dropped 93%. And it was primarily due to the impact of the Chinese not showing up in Niseko. So the impact is felt there. And of course, as that consumer goes to these international destinations, in Japan, Niseko, Hakuba, to Canada, to Whistler, to Vail, to Chamonix, travel the world. That's where they're really learning more about the industry and the brands that support the industry. And then they take that back to China and again, educate their friends via social media, social networking. So it's a very different way that the Chinese consumers finding out about the snow industry, I think, than we did when 20 years ago when again the industry was in its more of a heyday, shall we say, and really the peak of especially the snowboard industry.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the product? And whether you've had to localize the product set at all. And it's funny that I'm asking that question too, because I don't even exactly know what I'm asking, but I feel like there's a tingling, some sort of my spidey senses tells me that maybe there's a localization of even product set, product design, maybe the way that boards are made for different heights and weights and kind of like height to mass ratio type thing. I'm guessing, completely obviously guessing here, but I'm just wanted to ask that and see if there's a localizing of product set at all when you're in China. And then once you're done with that, let's talk about how you do marketing and maybe localizing marketing and growth of the sport and the brand in China.
Yeah, the localization of product is important in any market around the world, I believe, but especially so in China. For Burton, we make both hard goods and soft goods. On the hard goods side, we don't do specific boards for the Chinese body types for weight, height, foot size. What we do for the riding style. The thing about China is there's not a lot of natural snow. It's, the majority of the country is a desert. You're right outside Beijing and where the Olympics will be in the area of Chongli. There's 7 resorts. And they probably, if they get, a meter of snow a year, they're pretty lucky. So I think is man-made. So one of the things that we do is we localize the type of boards for riding. So the park and ground tricks are extremely popular right now in China. So we do focus the technical component of boards on that style of riding. For the board graphics, that's something that we also localize. Again, the Chinese consumer, like most consumers around the world, like to have a connection to either their board graphic or the type of boards that they ride. And so we do some localization of products. for hard goods on the graphic side.
Yeah, the graphics is actually one of the most particular things that I was thinking about because, that the board graphics are just so huge. And you're right, it's such a personal thing for everybody. But there are certain graphics that may not sell as well in that market, as well as they would in North America or vice versa.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, the funner graphics, the graphics with animals on it, the humorous graphics are loved in China. And it's so funny that one of our top writers, a writer by the name of Mark McMorris, had his board last year that had a grizzly bear on it, kind of waving hello to people. And the Chinese named him Gary. It was hugely popular, and it was almost a cult following for that board. It was so entertaining to just watch the fun that people are having with that board and with that graphic. Switching gears to the soft goods. Obviously, this is where we focus more on fit, because the Chinese consumer, in general, has a little bit different body shape than Westerners, even more so, to be honest, than the Japanese consumer. So we do a lot of localization of fit. In addition, the colorways that are in the outerwear, presently a little bit more flamboyant, fun colors are the flavor of choice on the hill. And so kind of some of the brighter colors are performing very, very well, where in the Western markets, we focus more on kind of the earth tones. So that's one of the big changes between the two markets.
Can we talk about marketing? Just and you can almost take that wherever you want to go, but and we do cover marketing here and there on this podcast as well, because marketing to China is very different. But talk to us about Burton's strategy, some of the key takeaways, things you've learned, things you do differently for the China market.
Very similar to product, there is localization of the marketing. And how we speak to the Chinese consumer. First and foremost, the level of education the Chinese consumer in the snow industry is in a very different place than in the Western markets. So some of the basic marketing is focused more on education of not only the sport of snowboarding, but the lifestyle around snowboarding, which is very, very intriguing for the Chinese consumer. The marketing format we use is much more digitally focused. We do a lot of integrated marketing. So we'll do a lot of events. This last weekend at our Beijing store, we did a rail event in front of the store, which is super fun. Put up a scaffolding, put some rails in, brought some snow. And people were blown away to just see the snow and people riding in the city. And it was something that we've done in the other markets 20 years ago that were equally as impactful. And then the difference, though, is taking all that digital content that was created and focusing that on different avenues and in different platforms in China. WeChat, I think, is the most amazing social platform in the world right now. I believe they have 800 million members on WeChat. I could be wrong on that number, but somewhere on that scale.
I second that motion.
Yeah. And it blows me away how amazing WeChat is. And it's such a platform for everything. And of course, we're using that platform really to help to tell the story of Burton, along with a number of other smaller platforms. And I think that's a big difference, where the Chinese consumer, really lives on their phone, even more so than the Western consumer. And that's what we capitalize on. We generate a lot of our content specifically for digital consumption.
I want to dive maybe into snow sport lifestyle. Okay, so as we know, snowboarding, and most snowboarders, similar to surfing, would say it's not just a sport, it's a lifestyle, dude. And Burton taps into that incredibly effectively around the world. To what extent is that notion, can that notion be relevant in China? I mean, would this mean that, if it was, would you sell more apparel than hard goods, for example? And does that have any effect on your marketing? Are you allowed to penetrate China, that it's not just a good. It's not just a textile. It's not just a sport. It's a lifestyle. And can you potentially integrate that into your marketing as well?
Oh yeah, the most important focus for Burton China is sharing the fun of the lifestyle around snowboarding. To be very honest, we wouldn't have to do too terribly much marketing. We have to do too terribly much work to lead the snowboarding industry. And I don't mean to be arrogant when I say that. Quite the opposite. We're fortunate enough where, Jake's 40 years of working his ass off to make Burton and snowboarding, the sport of choice and the brand of choice for the 20 somethings and the 30 somethings of the world. And that is also happening in China. The lifestyle component of snowboarding is, it's one of our main focuses going forward. The opportunity on the business side, which, to be honest, at Burton, obviously it's a business, but it's not our main focus. Our main focus as a brand is to, first and foremost, have as much fun as possible and share that fun. It's really one of Jake's visions early on. And he tells a story about when he started Burton. The reason he started it because he wanted to make just a bunch of money. And he knew it'd be a sport someday. And honestly, the first year he failed. And after the first year, he switched his mindset to really being focused on the rider, focused on doing the right thing for the brand, for the sport, and then the business would follow. And that's been Burton's direction since the late 70s. And I do believe it's one reason why Burton is Burton, because the business is important, but that's not first and foremost. So as we look at the Chinese market, and we know that we will do well in the snowboard industry. We don't have to do a lot of work to be the industry leader in China. We don't have to do a lot of work to really be successful on the business standpoint. Again, that's not us, though. We will work hard on the snowboarding side. But where we see the opportunity to really share the spirit of Burton and share Jake's spirit in China is with the lifestyle side. One of the big differences between the Chinese market and all the other markets around the world is the Chinese consumer doesn't really know Burton yet. I've been fortunate enough to work all over the world for Burton, and I'll meet people either on a chairlift or a bar or wherever I'll meet them, and just chat up a conversation. I'll say, "Yeah, I work for this company called Burton." "Oh, Burton Snowboards. I love Burton, but I'm not a snowboarder, so it's not necessarily a brand for me." But so for the Chinese consumer, we have this ability to position the brand a little different in their mind. So the mind space that we're hoping to own with the Chinese consumer is much more about the lifestyle side, bringing the spirit of snowboarding to the consumer 365 days a year. And how we will do that is through the apparel side of the business. We will, our business format and how we're going to take the brand to the markets will be a little bit different than the other markets. And right now, presently in China, mono-branded stores are extremely important for a brand. There's the shopping malls everywhere in China are destinations. People, mention everything's very digitally focused. However, that retail brick and mortar is still an area of importance for a brand because it really validates a brand. Some of the shopping malls in China are destinations for people to go to really learn about what's new in the industry, in the retail world. There's some amazing shopping malls. One of the top selling shopping malls in the world is actually in Beijing. It's called SKP. I think they did US dollars 2.6 billion in sales last year. One of the top shopping malls in the world revenue wise. Their biggest day was November 16th last year, and they did 150 million US dollars in sales in one day, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah, those are almost distance to the sun numbers again, but
yeah, exactly. It's like, are you kidding me, right? So to be in these shopping areas, it validates the brand. And again, if you go to a shopping mall, you're not going to go to a shopping mall to buy a snowboard or boots or bindings, but you're going to go there to, maybe buy a backpack, maybe buy some apparel. And that's a format that we will evolve in China a little bit differently than in the other worlds, the other regions. We're planning to have that 100 to 150 square meter stores that are very much talking about the lifestyle of the brand, the fun, the travel, the art, the music, everything that makes up the lifestyle around snowboarding will be really telling the consumer that story at these smaller mall-based stores. And of course, in the same breath, we will have flagship stores around the major cities in China. And those will be truly the full rollout of the entire product line and the service and the community building that's so important around the sport.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about mono-branded, that's a Burton independent store, right? It's not Burton product in another store, in a more bigger box store. That's a independent branded, fully owned, 4 walls or just Burton stuff type thing.
That is correct. Yeah. So when I'm talking mono-branded store, it is one brand. It's just Burton. It is, no other brands will be in there. It's run by ourselves. It's run by Burton China. And it will be, again, the two formats that we're looking at, again, that mall-based, which is really focused on telling the story and the lifestyle around snowboarding. And then that larger flagship is more about community building and creating an education center for people who want to really get into the sport and learn not only about snowboarding, but about Burton.
Right. Would you, and I know that, retail didn't exactly die. It certainly didn't go the direction that a lot of people were predicting 10 years ago, but I think it has somewhat morphed in its relevance and its direction. And I've had other guests say that retail didn't die because people still prefer to shop offline. They just bought online. And what would you say to that? Would you say that is still potentially true? And how true might that be for a brand like Burton?
Yeah, absolutely. We do see that. We see people who come into one of our flagship stores, try on 5 different type of boots, spend an hour talking with one of our Burton guides working at the store, and they'll be, hey, thanks, bye, and then we're almost positive that they go home and shop online to try to find the best deal that they can find. But with this said, there's a different customer who wants to be part of the community around the stores, and that's why it's so important to build a community at stores. One of the brands that does it amazingly well is Lululemon. Hats off to Lululemon. They crush it when it comes to the community building and really creating this sense of belonging to a store. And Lululemon does extremely well in China. I don't know their numbers, but I'd love to know them. I'm sure they're one of the reasons their stock price is cranking today. But and that's we're taking a page out of that book. We're really we've done that all over the world, of course, so it's not new to us, but it's a main focus. And so there is that consumer that wants to be part of that community that's at the store, that looks to create friendships and interaction with other people at the retail world. So I think that's as you look at the different type of consumers, there's absolutely that person who goes to the store, checks something out, and then buys online. And then there's the other consumer who is looking for more than just buying something, but the education and the sense of belonging to a mono-branded store.
I wanted to discuss strategy. So one of the questions that I was thinking to ask was around key tactics and strategies that have worked well for Burton in China. But I wanted to preface that with, how does one begin to start to strategize and set goals for a market entry into China? Can you, at a high level, take what you guys have learned from going through the setting of goals and then having those busted and then learning from them and then, getting much better at setting your goals and strategies? What kind of advice can you actually maybe pass along on how you would advise other companies that are coming in, maybe even in the snow sports industry? What can they expect about their goal setting?
China is definitely a different market when it comes to the business models that people approach the market with. The number of people in the different sporting industries have approached the business or their business in different ways. At Burton, we were very patient, and we're fortunate for we're a privately owned company. So we don't have a lot of the pressures that some publicly traded companies do have. But my suggestion to people and companies looking to enter the Chinese market is learn about the market first and foremost. Learn about your consumer. Learn their wants, what motivates them to engage with a brand, and that takes time, and it takes a lot of patience. I saw a number of brands that came in very aggressively, and they didn't succeed. They made mistakes, and that's the other thing is in China's like any region is when you make a mistake, the consumer doesn't forget it. And it kind of puts a little bit of I don't want to say a black mark on the brand, but it certainly has a tendency to make it more difficult to become successful if you makes these cultural mistakes that the consumer kind of learns about. And again, in the digital world now, I don't think there's any secrets anywhere anymore. And it's certainly very, very true in China. And so that's the first thing is be patient, take your time, learn about the industry, learn about your consumer. And then, a lot of the successful companies find local partners. And that's another potential a potential possibility for people and companies or to find a very strong partner. And it's not necessary for the partner to help run the business, but more the back office. One thing about China is government relations are extremely important. And it's difficult for foreign companies to come in and create government relations. That's where a local partner certainly can help. And that's a good way to get into the markets quickly and a little bit, I don't use the word safer, but it certainly does help.
Yeah. It's like a Sherpa, or exactly. It's a bit of a safety net or something. Just somebody who knows understands the landscape, on the ground.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely. And of course, choosing the right partner is that's a challenge. That's sort of takes a bit of time, and I think we've all known companies that have chose the wrong partners and paid dearly for those mistakes. But then the next key component of working in China is once you are set to start your business, you need to move at China speed. And that's a term you'll hear quite a bit in China. And China speed is getting everything done yesterday. It's pretty amazing where once, ready, set, gone, almost a mentality where you have to work very, very quickly once everything's in motion. Again, this goes back to the fact that the digital world is so impactful in the day-to-day life of Chinese. Information just flows so quickly, and you need to capitalize on opportunity. And that's for Burton, for snowboarding. We're very fortunate with the Olympics, which is giving the sport and the industry a lot of I don't want to say free publicity, but it's certainly a lot of publicity that's helping to educate the consumer, and to capitalize on that. It's very important for us to move quickly and efficiently to make sure that we don't lose the moment, because again, the digital world moves so quickly. If we don't capitalize on it at this time, then the next trend will come very quickly and will be bypass, which is one of the challenges.
Let's talk about the impact of the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics for Burton China. This is obviously a big deal. This is probably something that Burton China has been eagerly anticipating for some time. We're probably very excited when the decision was made to have it go to Beijing. What, tell us a little bit about, the impact that kind of Beijing winning that bid had on Burton China. How have you started to build out and ramp up activities? Everything about the lead up and what you're doing to get ready and take advantage of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and then we'll talk a little bit about maybe what if you've started thinking about life after the Beijing Olympics.
Yeah, when Beijing was awarded the Winter Olympics, I believe in 2015, it was definitely the start of development of the snow industry in China. At that time, the industry was fairly underdeveloped. Resorts didn't have a lot of infrastructure. Getting to the resorts was quite arduous. Getting from downtown Beijing out to the Chongli area where the the snowboarding and skiing outdoor events will be held was between a 4 and 11 hour car ride, depending upon traffic and conditions. Since the 2015 Olympics, the infrastructure that has been created by both the government and the resorts is world class. Now, to get from downtown Beijing to the Chongli area, again, where the Olympics will be, and there are 7 very, very well-developed resorts in Chongli. So it's pretty interesting. Now that trip's only a 55-minute high-speed railway train ride or a 2.5 hour car ride on one of 2 highways. So the government certainly put the money where their mouth is when they talked about supporting the Olympics. And in the same breath, not only in the Chongli area, but all over China, the development and the investments by resorts it's phenomenal. It's almost to a scale that is unbelievable. Up in Northeast China and Dongbei, where really snowboarding and skiing was born in China, the number of resorts that are being developed and the number of hotels and apartments that are being put in resorts is phenomenal. Going out west to the area of Xinjiang, which gets a lot of very, very good natural snow, some beautiful mountains, absolutely amazing national parks. The investments going on in that part of China, again, world class. Not only the infrastructure for accommodations, but snowmaking facilities and the chairlifts and all the hard goods that goes around the resort is phenomenal. So we're very, very excited about. The other thing that's very interesting in China that not a lot of people know is there are a lot of indoor snow domes. There's over 30 indoor snow domes, and the largest snow domes in the world, 3 of the largest snow domes are in China. The largest being.
You're going to have to tell us what a snow dome is.
Okay, sorry. So it's an indoor. It's an indoor resort. It's an indoor snow area. So for skiing and snowboarding 365 days a year inside. And the complexes are huge.
What would the height, what would the meters of that run look like?
Yeah. So the biggest one up in Harbin, the largest run is 550 meters. So that's over half a kilometer long, and it's indoors. And the snow conditions are quite good. The snow is great. And, it's very temperature controlled. And it's funny, there's the story about Harbin. And one of the reasons they made the indoor dome in Harbin is because it's so cold in the wintertime. You can go inside and snowboard or ski in a much warmer climate.
You can. Yeah. That's funny. You would say you would be indoors during the summer just because there would be snow, but you'd also be indoor during the winter because it's actually too cold to be outside.
When I'm talking cold, we're talking cold. Minus 30 degrees centigrade is pretty a normal day there. To the point where back in the day, when you get on a chairlift, they give you a blanket. Keep you warm. So
I've been there, and I did New Year's 2008, 2009 in Harbin.
Oh, so you know.
Yes.
It's chilly, yeah.
I mean, I know it's a little foggy because I think you have to stay half tipsy, the entire time. But yes, I do remember.
Yeah, it's good fun. But again, going back to, the impact of the Olympics, the infrastructure is amazing. And then, there's like Olympics everywhere in the world when the host country, is awarded the Olympics. The amount of investment with businesses to support and sponsor the Olympics is phenomenal. Air China, Bank of China, they're sponsors for the Olympics, and they're promoting the Olympics everywhere you go. And one of the main sports that they are promoting, either via television, digital channels, billboards within the city, bus stop billboards, is snowboarding. Because it is that up and coming, sport, and it has a couple of snowboarding has a couple of elements that are very intriguing to the Chinese market. Is kind of the aerial tricks for the half pipe riders coming out and doing the amazing tricks within the half pipe, which has that gymnastic kind of feel to it. Being outside and the danger component of it. A lot of people don't realize that, the Olympic athletes, the wall of a half pipe is 7 meters. And The athletes are coming out another 7 or 8 meters out of the half pipe. So they're basically 4 stories off the ground as they're looking to the base of the half pipe. And half pipes they're pretty solid ice blocks. And if you come down just a little bit off your mark, it ends up being a very bad day for the riders. So I think that's something that the Chinese consumer in the Chinese market really is impressed by, and it is very impactful. And I don't mean that as a pun by any means, but part of the fun of teaching the market about snowboarding is not just the lifestyle about it, but truly the sport and the competition side. And the Chinese consumer and the Chinese culture is like most cultures, just love sports. It's pretty impressive. And, although snowboarding isn't necessarily a spectator sport, more a participant sport, people still enjoy watching it. And it's, in the US, it's one of the top watch events for the Olympics. And we're expecting to see similar viewership for snowboarding in China for the coming Olympics.
How long is a half pipe? Like how many meters is that?
Oh, it depends. Yeah. That's a good question.
I'm just curious because I'm again still trying to figure out the snow dome because I've actually never been in one, and I'm still stuck there. And I'm like, well, so you probably fit in a half pipe, so a great place to train.
So like Olympic half pipes, I apologize. Actually, I don't know the actual length, but I'm assuming probably 350 to 400 meters. And you're right. You could put a half pipe within the dome. The other thing interesting about the domes, the snow domes, there's chairlifts inside them. So you get, you're on a 2-seater chairlift going up the dome. So it's pretty interesting. Unless you jump, some members should jump online and check out like the Harbin Snow Dome or the Chengdu Snow Dome. It's such a structure.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. That's some great stuff for people to go and Google right away. And snow domes in China. It's probably really, really impressive. I wanted to ask one more thing, just from a high level, from your vantage point. And you've mentioned this term that came from the government, which was create 300 million snow sport enthusiasts. From your vantage point, what has creating 300 million snow sport enthusiasts looked like so far since they put that initiative in motion?
Yeah, so the creating the 300 million winter sports enthusiasts, it's to be honest, a fairly vague term, but directionally, it's something that everyone has embraced, and it's in so many different aspects. And it's not just snow sports. It's like ice hockey. The ice hockey industry is also booming in China. The number of new skate rinks going up is very impressive. And that's part of that culture. So it's a very much of an encompassing term. It also encompasses fitness and, a healthy lifestyle. And that's something that we're also seeing where as people really take that to heart, the 300 million winter sports enthusiasts. It's, is it just throwing a snowball at somebody? Is that part of it? But with the message to everyone is, really to improve the standard of living. And I think that's one thing that the Olympics will do is really help people's standard of living improve in China. And to be honest, that's one thing that, we want to do with snowboarding in China is share the love of being outside, being with your friends, being with your family. Snowboarding by yourself it's okay, but it's so much better to do it with other people. And, and the founder of the company, Jake Burton, he was always very much of always pushed the fun side of the business, always really made that a priority. And I think that as we, as a company, Burton, help to support the creation of 300 million winter sports enthusiasts, it is the fun component of it. How do we teach people that, if you do strap on a snowboard, it's going to be fun. It's going to be part of, you'll be brought into this lifestyle that is just so much more than going down the hill. It's, spending time with your friends. We talked about board graphics. It's enjoying art and the music and all these components of it. And I think that all wraps into the creation of the 300 million winter sports enthusiasts, because it's much more than just doing a sport. And that's the exciting part. And that's really where the opportunity is in China. for anyone who wants to come here is, the scale is again, unfathomable. It's, the median age in China right now is 38 years old. So that means that there's 700 million people under the age of 38. So that's, it's mind boggling the scale of what's going on. And then it's fun. It's very different, of course, different place, but that's also what makes it so much fun.
Last question. And I'm going to just lean in on that word that you repeated a couple of times, fun. How has that changed, and how are companies, even like Burton China, trying to potentially overcome that? How are you helping drive fun? Is China accepting and making fun more of a priority, more of a factor in their life, and integrating that into the culture?
Oh, great question. And you're right. And I think that the recent history of China is, it has been focused on getting people out of poverty.
Serious is more work and academic and that, but fun was not necessarily overly encouraged. It was a luxury.
And going back to that, the implementation of the central government plan to create 300 million winter sports enthusiasts, I think that was the beginning of lighting the fuse for people to have fun. It really kind of changed the momentum of the market. It changed, how people were thinking. The Chinese have worked very, very hard to create this economy, the second largest economy in the world. And now the fun factor is kicking in. And it may be a little bit altruistic, but that's one reason we want to bring snowboarding to China, is so people can have more fun. Again, going back to kind of one of Jake's vision is, have as much fun as possible and share the fun. And that's part of our responsibility as a brand and as a sport, is to, educate people the importance of having fun. And I think that fuse is definitely lit in China, and it's changing, and the younger generation is capitalizing on it. And I do believe that, although it's a small part of society, but as people embrace snowboarding and the snow industry, they will have more fun. It's something to very much look forward to. And I'm a lucky man to be sitting here in China to have this opportunity to, carry Jake's dream forward.
There's so much to say about that. And I wrap it with a tiny monologue here for a sec, because when people ask me, what about China? What did you think of China? You lived in China. And I said, yeah, you know what? I had a lot of fun. When I look back, that's almost the overriding thing. When I was in China, I actually really did. I had a lot of fun. And we see it now. China has made some very measurable steps towards having more fun and encouraging people to have more fun. They've scaled back testing in school, and are now encouraging parents to just relax a little bit on that, and have put some measures in place to help them realize they don't need to push their kids so hard. The investment in fun infrastructure has gone, incredibly, from, Disney coming in, a lot more ski hills, a lot more ice rinks, just a lot more places for people to be able to have fun, to increase enjoyment. And then, more brands and more accessibility and more excitement around things like snowboarding, which is one of the funnest of fun sports to possibly enjoy during the winter. So I agree. I think China has really moving towards a place that is now embracing fun.
I agree 100%. A Universal Studios just opened up in Beijing, and I believe they're sold out for the next 4 months. And so the people's focus on having fun is phenomenal. And it's so encouraging. And it's, again, I'm just very, very lucky to be here and be watching the change in the Chinese society. And I do believe it's a very, very positive thing that will impact the world, because the Chinese who loves to travel, they'll take, they'll be sitting in, Whistler soon, and in Vail and Chamonix, like I mentioned earlier, and it's going to be amazing.
Last little wrap-up question here. We ask a lot of people, who might you recommend? Who are a couple of people, just from any industry? Doesn't have to be from snow sports or anything, but it also can be if you want. A couple of guest recommendations, just people you might be interested to listen to on this show.
Ooh, good question. Within the snow industry, specifically the snowboarding industry, this gentleman by the name of Steve Zerdowski, an Austrian gentleman who, because of COVID, isn't in China at this time, but he's considered the godfather of snowboarding in China. And he came here and came to China in 2000 and really helped to start the snowboarding industry, and is well respected in the industry. As a matter of fact, the first snowboarding event in China was run by Steve. And it was the Nanshan Open in 2002. And actually, Burton, we were the title sponsor at that time. It was quite an interesting event where they had to hand make the half pipe. It was quite fun. But his knowledge of not only the Chinese culture, but the Chinese snow industry is second to none. And then switching gears, an interesting gentleman who's the son of the founder of Wanda Group, a gentleman by the name of Wang Sutong. Very interesting guy. He's been in the press in some negative ways in the past, but he just loves snowboarding also. And very, very interesting guy, and very, very knowledgeable about the snow industry, and not only snow industry, he's actually heavy into gaming now and investing in gaming. And kind of the leader in that field right as now. But if you can talk to him next time, that would be. We'd like to hear more about what he has to think about what's going on in China now, and really going back to that topic of focusing on fun. I lead that charge.
Well, thank you very, very much. I have absolutely appreciated and loved having you on the show. This was such a fun conversation, and I think we're all looking forward to not only the Winter Olympics in Beijing coming up soon, but and definitely hoping for a lot of success for Burton in China. I think that a lot of success for Burton in China means that there'll be a lot more fun being had in China. So Craig Smith, CEO of Burton China, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was very enjoyable.
Growing a company is hard. Doing it in a foreign market? Exponentially so. The best piece of advice I can give you is not to do it alone. When you start looking across the pond for further expansion possibilities, and I sincerely hope that you do, make sure you choose the right partners to do it with. My good friends at WPIC Marketing and Technologies have almost 20 years of experience helping brands just like yours enter China. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Negotiation, and if you're interested in being a guest or want to connect with me or any of our team, please reach out to us at podcast@wpic.co, and be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. 再见。